lot of modern firearm inventors getting a lot of credit for some brilliant designs, quite frankly. But the firearm has been an evolution of inventions for over 1,000 years. So what we're going to take a look at is we're going to take a look at the history and the evolution of the gun. Well, this all, of course, began in 800 AD with the invention of gunpowder. A combination of carbon, sulfur, and potassium nitrate. This was invented in China, originally for the Terra philosophy of living in harmony, and it was used for medicinal purposes, often for burning out infected wounds. From 900 AD to 1000 AD, they started packing bamboo shoots as well as paper shoots with gunpowder, and then packed them with rocks or glass shards, this being the first ignitant propellant objects, and they started referring to these as fire lances and using them on the battlefield. By 1100 AD, it became a regular battle weapon in China. In 1132, the Song forces used fire lances in the Siege of Dilan as the first recorded significant battle to use what was referred to as fire lances. By 1200 AD, bamboo and paper shoots were replaced with metallic barrels, which lasted longer, but more importantly, gave a bigger effect of the propellant to launch a projectile. Also during this time, lead balls began to be used as projectiles. These would later be referred to as hand cannons. And the hand cannon continued to evolve, becoming bigger and more sophisticated, with many requiring two men to shoot. By 1200, we saw the hand cannon move to the Middle East. By 1260, the Mamluks used much larger hand cannons against the Mongols. From the 1300s and 1400s, this was common practice on the battlefield. By 1400, the matchlock began to appear. This was a slow burning match that fell in a flash pan, igniting the powder. This was also the first trigger mechanism, and it allowed for a one-man operation. In 1498, the rifling principle was invented in the Germanic region of Europe. By 1508, the wheel lock was invented in Europe. And in 1550 was common use. By 1580, the first revolver came about. This was a matchlock 8-shot revolver that required you manually rotate the revolving cylinder. And it was only 27 years later that we saw the first settlers arrive in Jamestown, Virginia. By 1590, the first cartridge was invented. This was a paper cartridge, but it wouldn't really catch on until the 1800s. By 1630, the flintlock is invented. It's a flint striking mechanism that causes the spark that ignites the powder. By 1637, countries all over Europe and Asia started proof marking firearms. In 1700, the firearm was the weapon of war. By 1750, it was very common for most people to have a firearm, including civilians. It's around that same time that dueling pistols came around. By 1776, the American Revolution began, and a fast advancement of the firearm began, starting with the Kentucky long rifle. It's a long rifled barrel which extended the reach of the musket much further than ever before. It was 1808 that we saw the first metallic cartridge invented. In 1807, the first percussion detonation devices started coming around. And it was 1 year later, in 1808, that the first metallic cartridge was invented with a percussion cap, a propellant, and a bullet. And this was invented by a Swiss gunsmith named Jean Saval Pauly. In 1820, we saw the first breech-loading guns being invented. This allowed you to load from the rear, giving you much faster follow-up shots. By 1824, we saw the first bolt-action rifle, referred to as the needle rifle, invented by Johann Nicholas von Drais. By the 1830s, percussion cap guns are common use. 1835, we saw the first Colt revolver come to the market. It's an incredible history on the Colt revolver. We did a video on the history of Colt. Highly recommend it. We're going to put that in the link below. By 1859, we saw the first rimfire cartridge invented. And then it was in 1860 that came about the Spencer repeating rifle. It was invented by Christopher Spencer, and it was the world's first metallic cartridge repeating rifle. It was later came the Winchester. Everything changed in 1862 with the invention of the Gatling gun. It's a multiple barrel rotary cannon, often referred to as one of the first machine guns. By 1871, we saw the invention of the first cartridge revolvers coming out by Smith & Wesson and Colt. And in 1877 was the first double-action revolver. It was the first repeating firearm that allowed you to just simply pull the trigger. In 1892 was the first what was referred to as the time the automatic handgun, which we would refer to as a semi-automatic handgun invented by Joseph Lahman. It was the following year in 1893 that we saw the first magazine-fed automatic pistol, the Bricart pistol. It was in 1911 that John Browning brought about the Colt 1911, which mastered the semi-automatic pistol. And most semi-automatic pistols today follow this design. It's about a decade later, during World War I, that we saw the first submachine guns come about, mostly created as a trench clearing gun. And it was the 1911, the submachine gun, that has evolved into most modern firearms that we see today. And as evil always shows its ugly head, it's inventions like the firearm that allows us to defeat it. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. And thank you for watching The History of Weapons.